Welcome to another Know My Faith Monday podcast, and with me today again is Davey from Living Well Counselling Services. Alan, good to have you back.
Great to be here again, Rob. Thank you.
Why don't we pick up kind of like where we left off with, because it's the baggage that we carry from our past that we bring to our future that we have trouble dealing with the current.
Sure,
Would that be right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Solve the world's problem. We
Okay.
can go home. That's
Okay.
good.
One of the best ways for me to describe it is I've had the privilege of helping build a house or two. And unless you've built a house or two, you don't realise the kind of effort that needs to go into getting the foundations down. Like
Yep.
It's hard work.
Yep.
And then once you've done the hard work, and money is involved, a significant amount of money is involved in getting that foundation down. And once you've done that, it gets covered up and then the house gets built on top of it. But if you don't do the hard work to get the foundation down, it doesn't matter so much what you put on top of it, because eventually if the foundation cracks,
Yep.
there are going to be cracks in the walls. And carrying that analogy on, what we tend to do, because
See, that's good because it's not my fault.
I'm going to say this and then we'll get back to that. When we're born into the world, we've never been here before.
Yep.
And I might have mentioned last time, I can't remember now, but from the womb to about the age of 7, they're called the formative years. So we're gathering in information about ourselves and about our world, and we're forming beliefs from that information that infect and affect us. So that's
We're a big sponge trying to figure out what it's all about.
We absolutely are.
Yeah.
And the reality behind that is children are good absorbers of information, but poor interpreters of information. And because we were all children once, we fit into that category. And so we can gather in information, come to conclusions about our world and about ourselves, and those conclusions then become that foundation that I was referring to, and then we live from that foundation. And until we are able to reassess the foundation we laid, am I clever or dumb? Beautiful or ugly? Do I belong or am I all alone? Am I significant or insignificant?
Yep.
And on it goes. Until we find ourselves being able to unpack that, which is that trace, face and replace.
Yeah.
Until we're able to do that, we're stuck. And we're stuck for the rest of our lives, to be honest.
Is it better to do, we're going to unpack that trace, face and replace. Is it better to do that when you're younger? Surely it must be easier, because as you get older, like our age, you're so stuck in your ways.
I heard a saying the other day, it's way better to grow good kids than fix broken adults.
Yeah.
And but that's easier said than done. The ideal, which unfortunately in our broken world, is rare to find. The ideal is that the parent helps the child navigate through life. And so the child says, well, I think I'm dumb. And so mum or dad, or mum and dad, then,
dispels that or reinforces it.
Well, the goal of a good parent is to say, where did that come from? No, that's not right. We all have intelligence. We're just not all intelligent in every area of our life. And, train a child in the way they should go. When they're old, they won't depart from it. We've all got different skills and abilities. And when a parent can recognize that in the child and help the child to celebrate those and live in those and feel that they're growing and valued in those and rewarded because of what they're able to do, then they're getting a foundation down. So when the mucky stuff hits the fan and the kid gets bullied or something, they're able to reorientate themselves back and say something like, well, that's what you think of me, but it's still not accurate. And so that then is the filter that the child is able to have to carry on. But because we're all broken, unfortunately, the ones that are meant to do the orientating and the supporting can be the very ones that do the opposite.
Again, when we were growing up, there was a lot more positive input into our lives, which I don't see, particularly in broken families, kids being brought up by not even stepfather, but mum's boyfriend.
I know.
And they are not interested in providing that child with growth at all. Too difficult.
And they don't have a vested interest in that child.
No, not at all.
And so they're vested interested in interest is in themselves.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing. I thought of this the other day, and I'll see if I can articulate it. God has his best interests for us in mind. We have our best interests for us in mind. Often they're not the same. So God's best interests for us and our own best interests for ourselves are often not the same.
Yeah.
We need to align ourselves with what God sees as best for us because he's right.
It's interesting, there's one of the early settlers to New Zealand, the Reverend Rutherford Waddell, what a great name. And he said, if you remove the teachings of the Bible from a child's life, and particularly the moral teachings and other things, let alone the spiritual side, if you remove that from a child's life, you will look in vain for the fruit when they are older.
Right.
And you replace it with the wonderful word aridities of secularism, right? Because secularism doesn't bring you any moral teaching at all. You remove that from a child's life, from that background, those formative years, you're going to look for that when they're older, and it's not going to be there.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Another analogy I like, you've got the foundation of a house, so that the house analogy is an excellent analogy, which is the foundation. If the foundations are good, whatever you build on top has a security about it that's going to stand the test of time. But if the foundations aren't good, you can still build what looks like a good house. And what we tend to do is, if there are cracks in the walls of that house, and as in cracks in the walls of our lives, we paper them over.
Just whitewash it.
Well, we do
plaster
that.
it.
We wallpaper it over. We put some new furniture in. We buy a new car and all those sorts of things. But in reality, if it's the foundation, it's like there's a drum of toxic chemicals in our basement, and the drum's rotting. It's corroding, and so the toxic chemicals are leaking out, and they're leaking out right up through our building.
In the same place all the time. So your kitchen can be fine, and your bathroom can be fine, but your living room is a mess. And no matter what you do, it's the living room.
Yeah, and what I have seen is, if there is an area of my life that's not working so well, it will filter through to other areas in my life. So we need to go back into those places and reassess. The other analogy I like is numbers of them for me. One of them is like baking a chocolate cake. If I have all the ingredients for the chocolate cake, but instead of cocoa, because I don't have any cocoa on me, I grab some mud. Because it looks the same.
Looks the same.
Brown,
yeah.
And I mix the mud in to make my chocolate cake. It won't taste so good.
Yeah.
And so if all the other ingredients are okay, but I substitute key one, cocoa for mud, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I put nice little chocolate sprinkles over the top of my baked cake. It still won't taste any good. And those are the sorts of things I think we attempt to do.
Yeah, and also the amounts of the ingredients. I remember my dad when he was a butcher, and when he first started making haggis, and he read the recipe wrong, and he instead of putting 2 teaspoons of cayenne pepper in, he put 2 tablespoons of, so the end result was that you had a haggis that you just couldn't eat because it was just far too hot. And so if you've got the wrong levels of whatever information we're supposed to get when we're growing up, that's going to affect us as well.
Well, there's, I think it's Taupo, the area of Taupo, when that was first farmed. I could be wrong there, it might not be Taupo, but when that was first farmed, there was a small trace element missing. I think it was selenium. And the stock didn't do any good. They didn't put on weight. They got sick. And when they discovered what the trace, and so it was unfarmable, or poorly farmable. When they discovered the trace element, trace face, and they replaced it with, they added the right element in, then things began to get a lot better, a lot quicker. And that's the good news for anybody that's listening, is we don't have to stay stuck with what we have. In fact, I have clients that will come to me and they'll say, how long is this going to take before I start getting better? And they're in a lot of pain, and their life has been quite miserable for them, and they've been struggling for quite a long time. And how long? And I say to them, not arrogantly, just confidently for them, I say, if you can find the missing ingredient and you can add that into your life, why wouldn't it start getting better now? Like you can walk out of here now.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is, I'm going to go all over the place possibly, Rob, so you guide me a bit if you want to.
Yeah, yeah.
But here's the thing. I'm not into the power of positive thinking. If I, and this is my joke, if I look in the mirror and say, I look like Brad Pitt, I look like Brad Pitt, and I say that 10 times a day for a week, guess what? I still look more like Armpit than Brad Pitt.
Yep.
So the power of positive thinking, I'm not into that. I'm into the power of truth.
Yeah.
So it's the truth.
Somebody said once, what is it? You can be anything you want to be. Yeah. Imagine if Shaquille O'Neal wanted to be a jockey.
Right. And imagine if I wanted to be a tall black.
Yeah. Ain't going to happen.
No.
Let's hold on to that little that missing ingredient thing, because one of the things that you major in is the trace it, face it, and replace it. Trace the lie that you've been believing that's holding you back. Face that lie and then replace it. Now, I don't want you to psychoanalyze me, all right? Mm-hmm. But I'll open up. So I have trouble finishing things, all right? And I have trouble believing that I am good enough. And I've traced where that came from. And it actually came from a very fun, light incident.
Yeah.
Right? So I got my school cert maths back, school cert results back, did really well at maths, because that's what I did. I did 92%. You're supposed to say, well done.
Well done.
Thank you. My dad said the same thing, but in different words. He came along, he saw that, he ruffled my hair, and he goes, what happened to the other 8?
Yeah.
And we both laughed.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm 15 years old.
Yeah.
I hear, well done, right? But the words I hear are, what happened to the other 8? And since then, so I've traced that. I think I've faced it, but the problem I have now is, and if I say I faced it, it would be 10 years ago that I worked that out. So I was 50. I still don't have that selenium to replace it with. Yeah. And I think to me that's the hardest part of the trace, face, and replace. You go, yep, figured out what it was said to me or what was done to me that made me this way. Faced it, that's not true. Yeah. Now I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Would that be right? That's the hardest part is the replacing?
Yes. It's part of the hardest part. I think the hardest part is actually to acknowledge that you've got something that you need to work on, and then you go
because I'm not perfect. Yeah.
Well, then you go to okay, I need some help to find out what that something is, and so you're beginning to face it. Then you begin to trace it, and once you've traced it, if you can recognize that what your dad said was a lie, it's not the truth.
Yeah.
According to God, it's not the truth. Like we said the other day, if I believe something about myself that God doesn't agree with, then one of us is wrong. And so your dad was wrong. He did it lightheartedly, but you took it as a wound. Yeah. You took it as personal.
Well, somewhere deep inside me, I took it as personal.
It was possibly there and it poked it.
Yeah.
It was possibly there and it poked it. You now need to be able to say, okay, what's the truth?
Yeah.
According to God, what is the truth?
Yeah.
And then you have to own the truth. There's a little understanding called neuroplasticity, without sounding too complicated. Neuroplasticity is understanding that the mind is pliable.
Yep.
Plastic. It's able to be molded. Once upon a time, they didn't think it was. God always said it was. Don't conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing. So the remolding of your mind. The replace it. I say to folk, this is simple but not easy. So the simple answer for you, Robin, and what you've just expressed is what you took on board from there was inaccurate. It wasn't the truth. So it was a lie.
Yep.
And so then you need to say, what is the truth? And it needs to be a personal truth, a tailor-made truth for Rob. It could be a verse of scripture, but it doesn't have to be. It needs to be something where you say, yeah, no, I own that. I own that. And then what you need to start doing is carry that around with you, that statement, that truth statement. We call them truth coaches. You carry that truth around with you, and you read that truth even a dozen times a day. And if possible...
How is that not the power of positive thinking?
Well, is it the truth? is the statement truth?
Right.
If the statement is truth, you can the truth can help you think positively,
Yeah.
but it's not simply positive thinking. You know, if I'm standing outside and it's cold,
Let's not go back to Brad Pitt again.
no, but it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? If I'm standing outside and it's cold, I can tell myself it's not cold, but it actually still is cold. So that's the power of positive thinking. No, it's still cold.
Or I don't feel cold.
Well, if you are feeling cold and you're trying to convince yourself you're not cold, you're still cold.
Yeah.
So you need to. So the power of truth helps me think positively, and that's why it needs to be tailor-made. So when you can grab hold of that truth, whatever it is, then you're able to say, no, what the wound that I had, the statement that caused that wound, the belief that came from that was that this is a lie, this is the truth. I now proclaim the truth.
So we've got to go digging for the truth.
Absolutely.
Do we find that truth in our past, or do we find that truth in the future, in the now?
Well, I think I said this the other day too. You know, if you want to know about water, don't ask a fish. So when you're in the water, you won't find it for yourself. You need to go to usually somebody. You know, the Holy Spirit can do that, but often a person can be a channel for that to happen as well. So you go to that somebody, a wise person, that can help you recognize this is I believed. I believed this about myself. Yeah. And a big part of what I do is helping a person, you know, this is the carnage my life has brought so far. And so I say to them, okay, well, if nothing changes, what's going to happen? Well, the carnage is going to continue. Okay, so what's causing the carnage? What belief have you got that keeps you tripping up where you behave like that? Because if you think of that 5-story, well, I call it a 5-story building, the basement of the building, the basement is our hidden beliefs, subconscious, under the ground. So the basement beliefs we have, I'm not good enough, or whatever it was you came to, the I'm not good enough, that's where the toxic chemicals are that then permeate through the building, and they permeate through my self-talk. So what I'm saying to myself, and that's one of the keys that we need to be able to do is when we can recognize our own self-talk, you know, I'm useless, I'm a failure, we only say that because we believe that. So now we're going further down.
I mean, I say to people all the time, you've got to be careful with what you say. I can say categorically that I am not any good at home handyman work. Right. You see it on the sitcoms. You know, the husband tries to fix the pipes and then it costs twice as much from the plumber. I can say that, but I shouldn't say I'm useless at fixing things. Mm-hmm. I'll never be any good at this. You know, because that's a future projection.
Sure. One of the things, if I had a piece of paper, I'd draw it out, but I'll try and describe it so that we can see it, because there's going to be people not watching anyway, so it's good for listeners. If we have 5 layers to us, basically, the top layer to us is the bit that's easy to see. Like if you come to Hamilton, you get on top of a hill, you look towards the city, you can see the tops of the buildings of the city. But to get to the basement of that building, well, you've got to take a journey. So here we go, we're on a journey, the journey of self-awareness, because self-awareness is the greatest gift we can give ourselves. Because when we become aware of ourselves, we can do something about it. Yeah. If we're not, we can't. And so the top floor is my actions and my behavior and my speech. What I say and what I do is clear to see. I can see that, others can see that. And that's usually the presenting problem. Yep. You know, I've stuffed up big time by what I did and what I said.
That's the building facade.
Yeah, well, that's the bit that is seen clearly. But the only reason that floor is sitting there is because there is another floor underneath it holding it up. Like that's that 5-story concept. Yep. So the floor beneath the top story is called our feelings, our moods, and our emotions. So if I feel happy, I'll act happy. If I feel unhappy, I'll act unhappy. If I have a good mood, I'll have good behavior. If I have a stink mood, I'll have stink behavior. So it's just cause and effect so far. So those 2 floors are sitting there. So we're getting a bit of an understanding. Top floor is what people see. Top floor is what we do.
Yeah, and what we do.
What we see and others see in us.
Second floor is the emotions that drive.
That's correct.
What we see
feelings and our moods and our emotions that drive that generate that. Yep. Beneath that, and this is where we get down to our self-talk. Yep. Is I'm useless, so I'll feel useless, so I'll act useless.
Right. Do you know how that's how the mongrel mob got named? The two guys that formed the mongrel mob were sitting in a pub having a drink, and a couple of other guys, older guys in the bar, just said, looked over and says, "Oh, look at those mongrels over there."
Yeah.
And they heard it, and they said, and they got, because it was obviously said loud enough for them, and they said, "Well, if that's the way you think about this,
we'll own that.
We'll own it."
Yeah, and we'll show you how much of a mongrel we are.
Yeah.
That's such a sad thing, and that's exactly where that you know.
And that's what we do. We own it. So, and again, we've got to get down to that basement, to that lie that we're obviously our talk on that third floor.
Yep. Our self-talk and our thoughts are what generate our feelings, which then kick into our behaviour. Whatever we've hooked into the feeling, we behave it. But the only reason we're saying that to ourselves, I'm useless, is the flaw beneath it, which is simply the word my beliefs.
Right.
I believe
that's what
this
I think
about
me,
myself. So I'll behave it, so I'll live it. And then under the ground are the hidden beliefs. So that the subconsciously held beliefs, usually formed, by the age of 7, often. Sometimes it can be a trauma in our life that can kick one in. We've had a divorce, or there's been a death, or some tragedy or crisis that can kick in another belief. But once we can recognize, see, here's the thing, Rob. If you're wanting to change your behaviour, will just working on changing your behaviour work?
No, I can't, because you've got to change everything else. You've got to get down to that foundation, don't you?
It's the foundation. So trying to work on our behaviour, behavioralism doesn't work. And I watch people try and do that. And it actually usually makes it worse, because guess what? It didn't work, so they failed.
So now they feel worse about themselves.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so then we try and change our feelings. Well, that's not going to work either, because our feelings don't come by themselves. They're generated from our self-talk. So then we try and change our self-talk. But that won't work either, because our self-talk comes from our beliefs.
Yeah.
So the only way that we can that we can be free to live in that state of all that's available to us, freedom, is to trace it, face it, get down to that basement and recognize that's what's causing that.
Yeah.
See, my behaviour.
You've also got to recognise that top floor. Sad for our people who are just listening to this and not watching, because their hands are going all over the place. That when Alan said that top floor, you have to first recognise that that's flawed, if you'll excuse the pun.
Yeah.
Because if you don't realise it's flawed, you won't go looking for the problem.
Yeah.
If you think, I'm okay, yep, everything's fine, it's everybody else's fault, which is quite common, isn't it? It's not my fault, it's your fault.
Well, I often get that. It's not my fault.
Yeah.
And I've got lots and lots of stories that help unpack that one. And we might get to one or two of those a little later on.
Well, that's quite biblical, though. I mean, everybody did that. From Adam, God says, Adam, did you eat the fruit? It's not my fault.
No.
The woman that, in fact, you gave me, she made me eat it, so it's your fault. Saul, what's this bleating of animals that I hear? Oh, the men got hungry and it's not my fault.
One of the things, one of the key elements for us to open ourselves up to change is James 4, verse 6, 7 and 8 says, God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. Therefore submit to God. Resist the devil and he will flee. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. What that's saying for me loud and clear, because we can hear that verse, that chunk of verse, and anybody that knows scriptures a little bit will have heard that verse, and there'll be something in us that stirs, something that says, oh, there's something gritty there.
Yeah.
Resist the proud.
Resist the devil.
Resist, God opposes it. Therefore, resist the devil, submit to God.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, there's something powerful there. But what is it? Well, this is what I believe about that. God opposes the proud. A proud person is someone that says, nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
It's you. God can't help that person because they've folded their arms. They're in defiance.
Yeah.
They're not willing to own their stuff for whatever reason. And what life will end up doing to that person is they'll give them more and more pain and more suffering. But sometimes they just become more and more defiant. And so God can't help them. Whereas the person that is able to recognize, yeah, I'm stuffing things up here. I made a mistake. I've done things wrong.
Yeah.
This isn't going well for me. This isn't going well for others around me. So now they're becoming humbled. So a humble person is a teachable person.
You got to make sure when you get to that, and this is, I suppose, a lot of the problem is that we go, I'm the one messing it up, da da da, but then we transfer that into the thought, I'm useless, I'm worth nothing. So we got to recognise that it is me that's causing the problem, without going then into the negative self-talk.
Well, that's often where people go, but that can still cause them enough pain to want to get free of that.
Yeah.
It's not the ideal, but we're in a broken world, and so God will still use that broken stuff to get our attention. Because here's the thing with that scripture. God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, submit to God. Well, what is submitting to God? What's that meant to look like? Well, submit to God. Who is God? God is the author of truth.
Yeah.
Submit to truth. So the quest is truth.
Yeah.
Resist the devil. Well, who's the devil? What's his role here? Well, he's called the father of lies. So we resist the lies. So when we submit to truth, resist the lies, using you as the example, the lie was, I'll use this, it might not be exactly you.
Yeah.
The lie was, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure. That's a lie. So what's the truth? So we resist the lie. No, that's the lie. The truth is this. And so then we replace the lie with the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth then sets us free. So we submit to truth, we resist the devil, and he will flee from you.
Yeah.
Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. That's the next verse. Yeah. And so what that is comfort. And I see that happen. I see that, I experience that in my own life.
Yep.
And I watch it play out in other people's lives. When a person can take hold of the truth, often even before they walk out of the office, they're saying, well, I feel an awful lot better. I feel a weight off my shoulders. And what I say to them, because I want to reinforce something for them, what I say to them is, the weight off your shoulders is not because Alan told you something that sounded nice.
Yeah.
And so then I unpack with it. What was it that's helping you with that? Well, it's the truth. You've revealed the truth. I say, good. So the truth is what you need to pursue, because you're going to walk out of my office.
Tell me what the truth is that you just learned about yourself, or that you learned.
And I write it on a card, or if it's more than one, I'll write them on, I write a list of them down, usually one or two, and I literally give them the card with their truth. And I'll hand it to them, and I say, read this. Is this what you're meaning?
Yeah.
Because
you have to own the truth.
It has to be tailor-made for them, not tailor-made for Alan, tailor-made for them. And I watch them read it, and I'm watching their response.
Yeah.
And if they're reading and they go, I say, give me the card back.
Yeah.
It's not the one.
Yeah.
But if they look at it and they go,
yeah.
And I even see a facial expression that helps me recognize they've owned that. I say, you apply that to your life, and you'll notice a change.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I even use this analogy. I say, if you went to a doctor and you had a rash on your arm, and he says, I know exactly what that is, that time of the year, that's where rashes, blah, 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 blah. Here's the cream, put the the cream on the rash, put it on there for 3 times a day for a week, come back and see me, just to see how we're going. And so you go back to the doctor a week later, like he's asked, and he says, let's have a look. And it's actually got worse. And the doctor says, that cream should have worked. I'm not so sure what's going on. And so the doctor casually says, well, how often did you put it on? And you say, I never put it on. I just put it on my bedside cabinet.
Yeah. I didn't apply it.
Yeah, I didn't apply it. And so it's the application, which is what we talked about last time.
Yeah.
It's the application.
Well, Derek Prince says the similar thing from his army days. And in fact, I think it was a rash that he had.
It was.
And he found that verse in Proverbs, which I cannot remember, which God said, I want you to quote this 3 times a day out loud. Which again is God's word, because God's word is truth.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key. The truth is what works.
Yeah.
It's the truth.
Well, and again, when you're looking at, because you're talking about those verses, everybody knows, resist the devil and he will flee. A lot of people forget the submit to God, which is the beginning of that verse, but hardly anyone goes to the earlier verse that God resists the proud. Now, when God wants a relationship with you, and he says, I resist the proud, he's going, I'm going to hold you off at arm's length if you are proud. That's not what I want. So You need to. Yeah.
He's forced to hold himself off.
Yeah.
Because we're not reaching out to him. We're in defiance, fighting around, saying there's nothing wrong with me.
I cannot give you the grace that I want to give you because you're being proud about it.
It's a sick that needs the doctor.
The truth. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Well, how about if we obey God, then we'll know the truth, and the truth will set us free. So again, it's getting that digging a bit deeper. How hard is it for people to recognise that there is a basement problem or a foundation problem in their lives?
Oh, very hard for a number of people. I had a guy a little while ago that he knew what his basement problem was, but he never wanted anybody to ever find out what he believed about himself. So he was a hard nut to crack.
So he recognised what drove that belief, because that belief was the ground floor, not the basement. So
he recognised it was there. He didn't know where it came from.
Right.
Because here's the thing, our behaviour comes from our beliefs.
Yeah.
So change our beliefs, our behaviour will change.
Yeah.
Which is what I was saying earlier. If we're trying to deal with our actions and our behaviour and our feelings and our self-talk, if we try and just deal with that, it won't work, because that's not where the problem lies. But some people are so embarrassed about, they think that they're completely naked and they don't want anyone to find out that that's how they see themselves. Yeah. And so it can take a little bit of skill to help that person be safe enough to unpack that stuff.
There's some very subtle things go on in our lives. A picture that I came up with years ago. If you're driving down, let's say, the Waikato Expressway, which is 110. So you're driving down there at 110 kilometres per hour, and the cars are flying past you. The kids sitting in your car are going, they're speeding. But if you're driving down there to 110 kilometres per hour and the other cars are just like crawling past you because they're only doing 112 or 113, the kids are sitting there going, Dad's driving slow.
Right.
Well, no, Dad's actually the one who's in the right. The other ones are still in the wrong, but the perception that comes in, and there must be so many subtle little things. I think I said last time, one of the kids that I saw when I was a chaplain at the local primary school, and he used to live with him and his sister lived with Dad for 1 week, and then they'd live with Mum for the next week, and then Dad, for off and on. And he asked me to come and talk with him, and Dad was getting married, Mum was getting married, and he was just didn't know what to do. And I said, you know how many kids in your class live with their biological mum and dad? He goes, most of them? I said, less than half. It's like, that's not just me.
Yeah, and last time, I think, and this may have been where that came from, is this realisation that the fall has damaged us all. Yeah. We're all damaged goods. Yeah. And that is a sigh of relief. So it's not just me, because we kind of think we're the only ones, and so we've got to protect ourselves from ever being found out. But when we realise, actually, it's all of us. That's why we need Christ. That's why we need truth. Yep. That's why we need a community of faith to help us process things well together, which that's important. Yeah. A healthy community.
Is it mostly just one lie that we're believing?
One of the things, one of the concepts that help with that is called the king lie. If we have a king lie, like if I believe I'm a failure, so that's the king lie, I believe I'm a failure. But attached to that is, well, I'm not going to bother working too hard at school because I'm a failure.
Because I'm a failure.
And I'm not going to go out of my way to find a good job because I'm a failure.
Yeah.
But when we can deal with the king lie, the I'm a failure lie, or whatever it is, then we find, because that was where the power was generated from, that's the toxic stuff, then we find the others that were attached to that lose their power.
Yeah. So, I mean, for the school, for instance, I'm not going to do well at school, so I'm dumb. I'm not only am I a failure, but I'm dumb. But the I'm dumb is driven from I'm a failure.
Yeah, and you'll probably find a cause for that you can go back to and reassess.
Yeah.
Because that's the goal, is to reassess. Yeah. Is this telling you the truth?
It would be much easier in your job, I'm sure, if all the lies that we believe were verbal, actual lies spoken.
Right.
You know, so somebody who said, "You are a failure." Right. I can trace that, but again, the subtlety of our minds, the subtlety, the different ways that we are built up, the complexity that goes into making up our psyche, it can be any incident that causes that for me to lie, to believe that lie.
Like I say, I've got a number of stories. I'll just briefly share this one just as an illustration. I had a guy come to me. I'll keep it vague. I had a guy come to me, and he was hitting into his 20s, and so there were adult repercussions for his actions, whereas prior there weren't.
Yep.
And so he sits in my office, and we unpack some things. I'll keep this short, like I said. And he had been diagnosed with ADD, attention deficit disorder. Yep. Even the word illustrates an issue, and the issue is attention deficit. So there's a deficit.
There's a deficit.
So it's not necessarily medication going to fix that deficit. And so he comes to me, and things are starting to go bad, and he's doing some things that will end him ending probably definitely in prison. Yep. If he wasn't to correct himself. So the pain was getting up there. So I said to him, "Tell me a little bit about yourself." And so he shares with me that he was the youngest of quite a large group of siblings.
Yep. And
so I asked the appropriate questions. And I said, "What belief did you come from that?" Now, I helped him go down, so I'm making this short.
Yep.
So the way I'm saying it sounds simplistic, but this was, an hour.
So you're digging through those levels of the building to get down to the basement.
I probably even used that illustration to help him go down. This is your behavior. This is what you're feeling. This is what you're saying to yourself. This is what you believe. Right. So we went dum, 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 down.
So now we're going, where do you think that belief came from?
That's right. And so he got quite specific about where that came from because of his family dynamics, being the youngest. And he was able to say to me that, I believed I'm ignored. In my life, I'm ignored. So his belief was, I'm just ignored. I'm worth nothing. I'm ignored. And so, like I say, I'll make this a short story. And so he's a Christian fella, this guy, and I helped him realize that he's not ignored because God is there and he loves him. And he owned that. And this was his line to me. He said, "I'm not ignored, I'm adored." That was his line. That was his line. So I wrote that on his card. And I looked at him and I said, "Do you know that the truth will set you free?" And he said to me, "What did you say?" I said, "The truth will set you free." He said, "Why did you say that?" And I thought, "I'm not sure where you're coming from." I said, "Well, Jesus said the truth will set you free." He said, "That's weird." And I thought, "What's weird about that?" He literally pulls out his phone, takes the cover off his phone, imprinted in the manufacturer's cover are the words, "The truth will set you free." Weird. And
it's one of those little God.
It was, and he owned that, and he got that. It was funny because when he left, I thought, heck, I wouldn't mind that cover because that's a good illustration.
That's a good cover,
that brings a point across well. Yeah. So I rang him up a little while later. Oh no, I bumped into him in town actually, and I said to him, "Hey, look, I'll buy the cover off you. I'll give you $20 for the cover." But no, he had lost.
He didn't want to. I'd lost it. So we've talked about tracing the lie. We've talked about replacing it with the truth. How do you face a lie?
Oh yeah, that's where I think to some degree you need to have good support.
Yeah,
because to go down into that place you've sought to ignore or to hide from, it's like, I might have said this, I don't know. If I had H written here, H for hurt.
Yeah.
So H on the palm of my hand. I've had a hurt in my childhood. Your dad rubs you on the head and you felt wounded from that. I suspect the wound came earlier than that, but it certainly poked that. Yeah. So there is a hurt there. So hurt is an indicator of something that's damaged. It's a wound that needs to be healed. Yep. So we have H written on the palm of our hand as an illustration of what hurt is. Especially when we're children, we don't know how to deal with that, so we close it up, so we hide from it. And so now has the hurt gone away?
No, it's just hidden.
It's just hidden. Yeah. And so who wants to bring that hurt out because you felt belittled or yucky or damaged or useless or something because of that hurt? So the last thing you want to do is say, "Hey, look how useless I am." But that's exactly what we need to do. We need to find the right place, counsel, and that's me, or that's people that do what I do to help them get to that place. Now, that can also be a good faith community. It can be.
Yeah.
It can be good friends, but there is a bit of a problem with that, which I think I said last time. It's not hard to help someone open up and spill their guts and have some cathartic
that's
release.
easy.
But to then help them stitch it back up again, that does take some skill. And that skill is available if you go looking for it.
Yeah.
So I encourage people to look for that. Because if they are in pain, there is healing to be had. It's like where I live, our driveway is a metal driveway. It goes down a hill to the road frontage, and that's where our letterbox is. If I go down to get the mail and I've got my gumboots on and it's a metal driveway, like I said, every now and then a stone flicks up while I'm walking, it goes into my gumboot. The moment it goes into my gumboot, I recognise as an object that needs to be sorted. Because the pain sensors in my foot indicate a foreign body that needs to then be addressed. That's the gift that we have of pain sensors. So I tip the stone out and away I go. All's good. If I hadn't recognised that, if I hadn't dealt with that, if my foot was numb for whatever reason and I kept walking, that stone would pierce my skin and could cause further infection.
And we have a lot. I mean, if we just use feet as an example, the number of times you get a little thorn or something in your foot, and sometimes in the hand, but you don't deal with it then, and you keep walking on it, it does go in, and eventually you don't feel it anymore, but it's still in there.
Well, usually it'll come out. It'll fester somewhere along the way, Rob. When the river runs low, the rocks begin to show. That's a line I really like. So people think everything's okay, and then something happens in their life, whatever, and up it comes again. They hit against that rock that was the H that was there, that is still there, and to me, people get upset that, why is it hurting me so much? Why is this happening? For me, it's kind of like, this is a God opportunity to deal with something that's there.
Yeah.
Because
and because he is a loving God, if we're humble and not proud, and he's not resisting us because we're proud, being the loving God that he is, he's going, I've chosen this moment in your life to work on this problem that you have. I didn't do this when you were 15. You couldn't have handled it. I didn't do it when you were 30.
Yeah.
Right? You're now 65.
Yeah.
This is the time that I have chosen to help you heal that, because we go, why have you let me carry this for all my life? And the answer is it could have damaged us more if we'd done it the wrong way. I don't know. God knows these things. His timing is perfect.
Yeah, I get that, and there is truth in that, but I still think let's deal with it as soon as we possibly can, Rob, because
that'd be nice.
That's the goal.
What about permanent damage? I mean, I use my bicep as an example. I blew this in Wanganui a few years ago in the gym with my brother, ironically doing preacher's curls. And that bicep, that's done. That's, I'm 60 years old now. Until the day I die, that bicep's had it. Is there must be damage of the psyche, of the mind, of the whatever that's similar to the bicep. It's like you're stuck with that.
Oh, that depends a little bit on what you mean by stuck with it. I think any soul healing, any soul that's been damaged, carrying on with that illustration to get back to that point, was the body has physical pain sensors to indicate a physical issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Because if we don't address it, it'll get worse. The soul also has emotional pain sensors to indicate issues that need to be addressed. You press my button is an indicator that you've got a button. It needs to be addressed. You rattled my cage is an indicator you're living in a cage. Get the key, get out of the cage. You yanked my chain, you pulled my string. Those are all indicators of a pain that's going on that actually needs to be addressed.
Right, yeah.
And if we don't address it, it won't go away. And so the quest then is to say, I'm sick, I need healing. And I personally believe when you start owning that, God gives grace to the humble. Yeah. When you say, I'm in pain, then things will start to happen that will help you be able to process and deal with that.
Yeah, yeah. So the facing it, because we talked again, trace the lie, face the lie, replace the lie with the truth. So that facing it, that's something that shouldn't be done on your own. Could be done on your own. Because you talked about needing somebody alongside you. Because I mean that can be a painful thing.
No, it absolutely can be done on. Well, when you say on your own, if you mean all by yourself in your room, all alone, not so sure on that.
Yeah,
but
that's
if you
what
mean
I mean.
on your own, that's
what I mean. Yeah, yeah. I don't need to go and see Alan. I don't need to go and see my pastor. I don't need to, but I can sort this out myself.
No, I don't. I think that's going to be very difficult. I think I said this last time too. If you want to know about water, don't ask a fish.
Yeah, yeah.
When you're just stuck in it,
You actually said it this time too.
Oh, have I just said it?
That's
that
right.
went quick. Okay. Where am I?
No, you're right. Yeah. So we really do need somebody looking outside.
We need each other. We need others. Yeah. We're a body that does need each other to help each other out. I mean, I personally feel called to do what I do.
Yeah.
But that's not for everybody. But if we're all doing what we're called to do, I think the body can function really, really well.
Yeah.
So let's just own our calling and step into it and get skilled and equipped and make yourself available, and then just see what will happen.
Yeah. In some ways, I'm thinking that's why we still need to help Nana with her baking when we're 18, 19 years old, because Nana's got that wise listening ear.
Right. Come alongside her and it's good.
And again, when we look at the families that are growing up nowadays, you don't have that. You don't have the grandparents around. A lot of it because the families are broken up so much, and so the children that are growing up are missing out on.
Yeah, there's a deficit.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to fill that deficit appropriately, because here's the other thing, isn't it? If we have a deficit, we've got, as I understand it, we have 4 fundamental emotional needs. And you can Google it and you'll find a list of 12 or 14 of them, because I've Googled it. But they still boil down to 4. One is, so these emotional needs, not physical. Yep. One is the need to be innocent, free of guilt, free of shame. Because guilt and shame is just crushing.
Yep. And
how many of us here have things that we regret doing and feel guilty and shamed about if we think about it? That's probably all of us. And that, if it hasn't been dealt with appropriately, can really, really restrict us. It causes us to shrink down because of the weight of the burden of our guilt and our shame. So our emotional need is, we need innocence, which is freedom from guilt and shame. We need significance, which is worth and value. We need safety, which is belonging.
Yeah.
We need progress, which is a purpose for living. Now, I think to some degree, 3 of those needs can be met in a shallow way by our world.
Right.
Significance, well, I'm an athlete.
Yeah.
Belonging, well, I'm part of a team. And that's all good, so I'm not knocking that at all. And purpose or progress, well, we can all aspire for something that's worthy.
Have a goal to go for.
Yeah, there's something that's worthy of achieving for our life. But there's only one place we can go for innocence. There's only one place where our innocence is absolved, where our innocence is taken, is owned by where our guilt, our guilt is absolved, our shame is absolved, and so it's taken by someone else on our behalf. Now we don't have to own it. We might still have a scar, which I do, an emotional scar of the dumb things I did. And when I think about it, I go, oh, if I knew now what I knew then, I wouldn't have done that. But I didn't, so I did do it. But I still filter that through Christ, not just simply Alan on his own going, oh, what a huge embarrassment that was. So we need those 4 fundamental emotional needs. We need to pursue having them met. And fundamentally, they are all met profoundly well through Christ.
Yeah. I love the way Gary Smalley put it with there was a marriage course that Sharon and I did with Gary Smalley, and he pulled out a rather tacky-looking gem. It was about fist size, and he says this gem is worth $50 million. I bought it for $4
million.
No. $4.
Good
but the value I place on it is $50 million.
Right.
It may not be that valuable to you, but that's how valuable it is to me. And then he talked about our value to God. And again, this is replacing the lie for my significance. My significance. He uses a little light bulb with an extension cord on it, and he would say, what we do is we try and get our bulb to glow bright for significance, and we go around and plug it into Alan. But I burn Alan out, so I go, I'm going to plug it in over here. Good. He said, we need to plug it into God, and it will glow all the time. He says, that's where your significance comes from. That's where your value comes from, is what does God say about you? Yeah. And I remember using this years ago with a couple of young girls, one who had the fetal alcohol syndrome and been bounced from here to here. And I used Psalm 139, where God talks about how, my thoughts for you are like the sands of the sea. I said, this is your significance. This is your value to God. No, it doesn't matter what everybody else says. This is the creator of the universe, looks at you and sees this. And that's what we've all got to get to.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. What's the saying? The main thing I get out of my life is who I become, and the main thing God gets out of my life is who I become. It's the same thing. It's who I become. Yeah. And the who I become really, in the purest and most beautiful way, is hooking into God and becoming like Christ. Yeah. Owning the identity that is mine in Him, and being transformed into His likeness by owning that truth. Yeah. See, there's a verse of scripture I'm trying to memorize at the moment. In fact, I've got it.
It's written down somewhere.
I've got it written down here, actually.
It's on the phone cover. The truth will set you free.
No, that wasn't the one. Was this it? Yeah. This is how God showed His love among us. He sent His only Son into the world that we might live through Him. Yeah. See, God doesn't want to live through us. He wants us to live through Him. Yeah. Do you understand?
It's huge, isn't it?
Because if and this is my thinking. If I let God live through me, it's like I'm a waterfall, and it's a muddy waterfall because Alan's got muddy stuff in his life, dirty stuff in his life. If I let God live through me, Christ lives through me, by the time He's got out through me, He's got himself a bit tainted. Do you understand? Yeah. So there's
a few Alan mud splatters on God.
Absolutely, that's right. And I'm not expressing who God is very well, because Alan's coming through more than God is. Yeah. Whereas if I can live through Christ, if I can own Christ's stuff, the more I walk through His waterfall, the cleaner I become. Yeah.
To live in Him. Yeah. It's I think Ted Decker does it well in his first books, Black, Red, White, where he has, in this alternate world, there's the pool of Elion, and you need to get cleansed in that pool. But not only do you get cleansed in the pool, you have to breathe the water. Right. Right. And so the Thomas Hunter, who's the protagonist in the series of books, diving in the pool, I don't have a problem with that. Opening my mouth and going, yeah. That's a bit tricky, but that's where God wants us to live in Him. Yeah. But knowing that, and we probably should say this too, is God can, if I've still got that lie in me, if I'm still damaged goods, I can still be being used by God.
Oh, absolutely.
And going in the area where He wants me to go. Instead of sitting back and going, well, no, I need to go and see Alan and deal with all of this before God can use me. That's a lie on its own.
No, that is a lie on its own. But what I would say to that is, if you're not processing the deep things of your soul appropriately, then those things haven't been dealt with. Yeah. And those things will, to some degree, get in the way of your calling. To some degree, they'll get in the way of your calling.
Tiger Woods, right? So Tiger Woods, #1 golfer in the world, gets himself a new coach. Coach says, your swing is wrong. What does Tiger Woods do? Does he go, bro, I'm the #1 golfer in the world. I'm not listening to you. He didn't. He said, oh, how do I fix it? So he fixed it, and I don't know what you're driving. He drove an extra 10 or 15%. because he was humble enough to say,
exactly.
I'll let you fix my... He was already the best.
Yeah.
And he became better.
Yeah.
So God can still be using me with my damaged bicep, with my missing 8% on my school cert maths.
Well, guess what? He's still using me.
Shock horror.
So let's not think we've got to become a saint before we can be used by God, but let's humble ourselves enough to realize there may be stuff getting in the way of him using me as well as he possibly can for his glory and for my good.
We're out of time, but are there some lies that are common that we believe? That, and not to talk about this time, but it'll get you back again maybe next time, where we can talk about some of the common lies that we believe about ourselves.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And deal with them.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Because there's one or two other things that are hooked into those that if we don't recognise them, we can get tripped up as well.
Yeah, all right, great. So Alan, thanks so much for coming in, and I look forward to next time.
Me too, Rob. Thanks for the invite. Nice being here.